if by some chance you think that there's some background noise or you think it's being noisy, I'm going to put it on you to hit your mute button. I know last time everybody was talking over top of each other. And
what are you saying? Don't talk
Should we
over
not
people?
speak? I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
We all should talk at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, if
all right, all at once.
Yeah,
What should
we all try to talk at the same time?
Basically, do what you're doing now.
Yeah. All right. So that didn't work. We'll move on. This is episode 205 of Bourbon Pursuit, and we only have a little bit of news to go through today because it's the Bourbon Community Roundtable, which is all about the news. Old Forester Birthday Bourbon is out of the gate. It's typically one of the first ones we see and hear about during the fall release season. Well, I guess it's that time because the 2019 edition, the specs have come out, and it's going to feature an 11-year-old 105 proof expression, which is the highest proof to date. A total of 120 barrels were distilled on May 15th, 2008, and aged on the second floor of Warehouse I. Master Distiller Chris Morris and Master Taster Jackie Zykan, who have both been featured on the show previously talking about birthday bourbon, selected and proofed this year's limited edition. The 2019 Old Forester Birthday Bourbon is going to be offered at an MSRP of $99.99, and roughly 13,200 bottles will be available for purchase nationwide. Well, this episode, it's a doozy. The first half of this episode is focused on the largest Facebook site known for buying, selling, and trading bourbon. And really, it's kind of a necessary evil because that's how valuations are really how they're created. But this is also a little pretty controversial in the underground sort of bourbon community because people thought there were ulterior motives involved. Just want you to know, we try to be respectful and come at this from a very journalistic approach. We cover the news, and the big news of this week was the letters of the admins that received them from Bourbon Secondary Market. And they got these from Facebook officials. So don't get me wrong, there's still plenty of places on Facebook where you can get your hands on these goods, but this was a very high-profile page, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. In the second half of the show, we are joined by Marianne Eaves as she discusses her departure from Castle and Key and what's on the horizon for her in her next adventure. Like I said, this show has a little bit of everything. Oh yeah, and there's a teaser about marijuana with bourbon at the end, which you can look forward to hearing more about next week. With that, let's hear from our good friend Joe over at Barrel Bourbon, and then you've got Fred Minnick with Above the Char.
Hi, this is Joe from Barrel Craft Spirits. Every batch we produce has a distinct flavor profile. We take pride in blending and preserving spirits for the people who enjoy them the most. You. Lift your spirits with Barrel Bourbon.
I'm Fred Minnick, and this is Above the Char. The box came into my office like any other box. The FedEx man dropped it off. I cut it open. I ripped it out, and I pulled a bottle out. But the excitement that I felt when I saw the bottle was far different than when I usually get a 90 proof bottle or some new product from one of the big distilleries. This one had etched in the label, Bottled-In-Bond. It was Catoctin Creek, a rye whiskey out of Virginia. I set it next to other Bottled-In-Bond whiskeys on my shelf. George Dickel, Bottled-In-Bond Tennessee whiskey. Dad's Hat, Bottled-In-Bond Pennsylvania whiskey. Tom's Foolery, Bottled-In-Bond Cleveland bourbon. It's made in the Cleveland area. And as I looked at these on my shelf, I couldn't help but feel the pride just overwhelming in my soul. You had Bottled-In-Bond from Virginia, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. It was absolutely phenomenal, especially when you consider that 10 years ago, the Bottled-In-Bond was almost extinct. You really only saw about 15 bottles on the shelf, and those were mostly from Heaven Hill. But as bourbon started becoming more popular and as rye became more popular, you had one particular brand ambassador who was going around the world telling people about Bottled-In-Bond. He's covered in tattoos, plays bluegrass music, wears belt buckles, and can tell you anything you want to know about bourbon history. His name is Bernie Lubbers. He's one of these guys that has the passion of 1,000 bourbon reps, and that's because he knows his stuff. But more importantly, he believes it. And it's of my opinion that if it was not for Bernie out there discussing the heritage and importance of Bottled-In-Bond whiskey, that we would not be seeing George Dickel on the shelf or Catoctin Creek or Dad's Hat touting being Bottled-In-Bond. If you want to learn about that history, go check out his website. He's the Whiskey Professor. He's got a book. I've written about the history of the Bottled-In-Bond Act of 1897, but really, in today's sense, I give all the credit to Bottled-In-Bond's return to one man, and his name is Bernie Lubbers. So if you happen to like Bottled-In-Bond whiskey, find Bernie on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram and tell him thank you. Because if it wasn't for him and his big giant tattoo on his arm, I don't know if we'd have Bottled-In-Bond right now. And that's this week's Above the Char. Hey, if you have somebody you would like to highlight in Above the Char, hit me up on Instagram or Twitter at Fred Minnick. That's at Fred Minnick. Until next week, cheers.
Welcome back to an episode of Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of Bourbon. This is the 33rd meeting and podcast recording of the Bourbon Community Roundtable. It's this one, it's odd because we usually spend about a day or two ahead of time kind of thinking of random topics. I always maybe sit there and look at some tweets Fred had put out the week before and see if like that's makes good for a conversation or a topic. However, today, this one sort of came all together like within the span of an hour and a half. It was a bombshell that kind of got dropped in one of the largest Facebook groups, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But Kenny's here, Fred and Ryan joined us here as well. How's it going tonight, fellas?
It's going great.
Well.
Kenny says that it's okay to talk.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's funny. Your intro, I was like, people may or may not know I delete social media during the week. So I normally have no tables are till about 30 minutes before. I logged in today on Twitter and I was like, oh shit, I'm really behind. What are we going to talk about? This is insane. So I'm super excited about today's show.
It's a riddle. Like, how do you piss off 50,000 bourbon enthusiasts in one post?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and the thing is like I think what's happening can play into a kind of like a larger kind of national conversation as well. So this is important for all of us right now to talk about.
Well, good. People always like discussions on the secondary market. We don't like to think it exists, but of course it does. That's how names get kind of brand names can get spread around. That's how valuations happen. So it's almost like a necessary evil. But before we kind of start talking about that, I want to go around the horn as usual, let the folks introduce themselves. And we're going to go with on my left, starting with Blake of Bourboner. And he's on mute. He followed the directions.
I followed directions a little too literally. Well. They've always said that about me. I did too good of a job on direction. No, I'm Blake from Bourboner. Always fun to be here. It's let's see, the 34th Bourbon Roundtable in a row, and the 34th time you've seen my face, because that is the Cal Ripken of the Bourbon Roundtable. So thanks for having me.
It's the 33rd, but who's counting?
33rd. I was predicting that I'm going to be on next month's as well.
Yeah, let's see what that magic 8 ball says. All right, Brian, Sippin' Corn, how are you doing?
All right, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me again tonight, guys. Brian with Sippin' Corn. You can find me on all the social medias at Sippin' Corn, and online. You can find all those things and more at bourbonjustice.com and sippincorn.com. Brings you to the same place. And looking forward to tonight's conversation, guys.
All right. And one of the highest ranking whiskey blogs out there today, Jordan from Breaking Bourbon. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having us. This is Jordan, one of the three guys from breakingbourbon.com. You can find us on all the social medias at Breaking Bourbon, along with Patreon, and make sure to check out our updated release calendar that's updated near daily.
Awesome. So with that, let's go ahead and kind of kick off the show. We hinted at a little bit. It was going to be talking about the secondary market. There is a large Facebook group in there. They don't really try to make it sound like it's hard to find. It's actually called Bourbon Secondary Market. So there's no mystery whatsoever. But it's typically one of those places that it's kind of underground. You have to be invited into it. And it's a buy-sell trade form. I know that everybody on the call is a member of it. We've all been there before. So, and before we kind of get into the meat of the subject, I want to introduce Craig. So, Craig, I'm going to hopefully don't screw it up again. Ruprecht, right? has joined us today. So Craig is one of the admins of Bourbon Secondary Market, or BSM. So Craig, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks.
So Craig, before we kind of get into it a little bit, kind of talk about like how you came to be an admin inside of BSM.
Sure. So I think everyone knows the group's founder, Owen, and through another group that Owen runs, I came to know him, which is Louisville Bourbon Hounds. And when you're running a group that size, you tend to, when it gets to a certain point, you tend to reach out to people that you trust to help you run it. And so that's basically how that happened. I mean, the group existed for, I don't know, a good year and a half, 2 years before I came on board with the admin team. And so that's basically what it was just someone that would be somewhat level-headed. I don't know. Do we think of BSM admin? Do you think of level-headed? I hope so.
As level-headed as the secondary market gets.
Right. So, but yeah, someone, although I probably get accused of being one of the more think with my emotions first type of admin in there. We try to be fair. It can be a challenge. We used to admin under our names in there, and then we switched to adminning under the BSM page just because guys get ridiculous. Their bourbon feelings get out of control. They can't contain it in their feelings journal, and so they have to. I didn't create that graphic. Well, I didn't create the actual feelings journal, but that was someone else that made that picture. But I do take credit for putting that into the bourbon secondary market vernacular, as it were. But yeah, so that's how it came to be, was just, I'm happy to help out. I think now whenever we are looking for admin, I think our first rule is if someone is reaching out, if they're actively pursuing being an admin, like, hey, I'd love to help out. No, you're not.
That's not a good fit.
Nobody wants to be an admin in there. But we're, a close-knit bunch of guys. And, but yeah, we admin from the page just because, guys get crazy. They threaten your family. They threaten your livelihood. It gets ridiculous all over a silly bottle of bourbon. So, so that's why that change initiated. So today, we had this email come out that basically says Facebook's changing their community standards or tightening them. And so therefore any groups that buy, sell, trade alcohol, they want to have that activity cease. And so we, of course, had discussions about how that would affect us, how we would operate. And so I think that what you're going to find is that the Mega Balls group, which we also run for auctions, that's going to get, I won't call it mothballed, but we're just kind of not going to be adminning that. So I don't have the logistics of that yet, which Owen could probably speak better to that myself. And then with regards to BSM,
yeah, I was like, let's focus on the BSM. Kind of what was, because I know that's what a lot of people are here really waiting for is what is going to be the next iteration. And by the way, for anybody that is just like totally like not have any idea, they're new to bourbon. Yes, there's this huge secondary market that exists. There's like 55,000 people in there. People post bottles for sale. People say they'll buy it, and it ends up and shows up at your front doorstep. And that's what he's kind of talking about, this whole buy, sell, trade thing and this kind of open market that happens inside of Facebook. But Craig, kind of talk about what is the new ruling or kind of like the next iteration of what is to come here at BSM. What's the go
So
forward
I think
plan?
what we're thinking now is that it may go to a straight deal by messenger sort of situation. I don't know that we've fully worked out the logistics of that. And for myself, I just think, adminning something like that will just be a nightmare. In some ways it's like a second job already, but I think that we'll kind of have to see how that plays out. There hasn't been any, it doesn't make sense to go to a backup Facebook group because you're under the same restrictions, right? Your backup group's going to get tagged and knocked down if you're engaging in that activity. So right now, what we've read into it is just change your group name. Don't have anything in your group description about buy, sell, trade. Don't do any activity in your group. And of course, it only takes one upset person to wreck that. So I think we're leaning towards a PM, a Facebook Messenger sort of based setup, similar to some other groups that are a little smaller than us and are maybe secret, and you got to know somebody to get in there. That used to be ran by a guy named Phil. I think that certain groups that allow PM dealing, and we never did. We were always about just having it done out in the open. So it may very well likely be a 180 from that. When we make a final decision, I know Owen, or you'll see a post via the BSM page, will come up and say as such. But I think that's sort of the prevailing thought right now, is that we would go to something like that.
So, Craig, you guys get this news today. What time today? Like in the afternoon?
Roundabout. I think I was just wrapping up with work when I checked my email and I saw that, and then we started sharing that. I think it was a little bit even earlier than that when I hopped into the admin chat and saw that there was already some discussion about that.
So you all have, built something that is very much a part of the bourbon culture, especially kind of like the geek culture. And, a lot of us, kind of look up to, appreciate what you all have, done. And now it's kind of being taken away, in some ways. I mean, on the personal level, I know you guys have been through a lot in managing this, but, what were you all feeling when this came through? What was going through your mind when you guys got this notice?
I think it's like, well, here it is. Right? Like there's always been, guys have speculated about this sort of thing happening to our sorts of groups for a while now. Facebook's done similar things with other groups that were of a sensitive subject matter that they felt like were not in line with their community standards. And so we've always felt like, the hammer was going to fall at some point. And if you remember quite a while back, we had that little kind of dust up when bourbon groups just sort of vanished.
Yeah.
Chicken Little came out and the sky was falling then, right? And then
does it feel different this time?
It definitely, like before, you didn't know what was going on. And again, you thought the same thing. You thought, well, this is it. The hammer's finally fallen and Facebook has done away with us. And we were scrambling to figure out, other social media avenues to do the same thing that we were doing now. This time around, it seems a little more serious, right? Like there's a plan. They're actively searching for these sorts of groups that are, not by virtue of being a bourbon group are you necessarily doing wrong, but whenever you cross that threshold to buy, sell, trade, then Facebook's not liking that. So yeah, it just feels like it may have more weight this time. We're treating it more serious. I think there's some within our ranks that feel like maybe wait and see. There's also a little bit of disbelief, right? Like, oh, is this just some, nonsense email that someone has sent trying to troll us or, something like that. Several folks, even folks that manage large Facebook groups that are not bourbon related, received an email. So yeah, I think just more serious is a way to kind of sum it up. So enough that Owen and the rest of us feel like we want to react to it, to kind of just, allow this sort of thing to carry on. And regardless of whether it's by Facebook or not, like I'll quote Jurassic Park here, like life will find a way, right? Like if it's not
hold on to your butts.
Exactly. Like if it's not via Facebook, You can't keep a good flipper down, right? They're gonna try to hawk their bottles of E.H. Taylor Small Batch and Weller Special Reserve and whatever. No matter where they are, whether it's in a smaller Facebook group or Craigslist or eBay, God forbid, or whatever. Like, folks will find a way. So, what we haven't talked about is any sort of moving to any other social media format. I think once upon a time we messed around with and I'll probably butcher the name, Mayway page, Mayway. I don't know.
There's actually people in chat that are talking about that right now. I'm unfamiliar with the platform myself.
Yeah. So we had messed around with that. The issue you always run into with something like this is a group this size when you switch over to something like that. Like, we had kind of sort of worked the kinks out of adminning via Facebook. So then you switch to another platform and then adminning via that way, and trying to just figure out all the ins and outs of that is a bit of a headache. So,
I feel like everyone's already on Facebook, so that's right. A tough thing to just automate, because everyone's on their phone every single day, and so then they just see it constantly. Yep.
And it's just one more channel you got to keep up with when you have so many already, and it's like, who wants another channel to mess with? But
you already have the older generation who's not on Facebook getting on there just for bourbon. Now, I don't even know what MeWe is, so it's gonna be a whole other issue.
If Kenny doesn't even know it, then
everybody's kind of my barometer. But migrate everyone over there is trouble.
Yeah.
No, you're totally right. I mean, Facebook is the logical platform for a lot of these kind of things, because that is where people spend their time already. And so Owen had sent us a message, at least Blake and I, a little bit earlier. And so I'll kind of talk about what he had posted as the potential new rules. This is not official until it becomes official on the forum. But he had said that the new stuff is that you do not talk about buying, selling, or trading alcohol, because this is now against Facebook community standards. So that's no longer going to be allowed inside the group. You're only here to see pictures. If you want to talk to the person that posted the picture, then send them a PM. So kind of thinks of the old days of put something up there, expect a PM to come in as well. Discussion posts are still not allowed. Go over to Bourboner for that, of course. Throwing out the plug for you there, Blake.
You appreciate that.
But another way around this is that if you want to, you just throw a link in to something that you had posted off of Facebook. So if you are posting it on Bottle Spot or Craigslist, you just drop the link in there, and then people can PM you that way. And that's how they can kind of get in contact with you with that particular bottle. So it sounds like if there's a will, there's a way, because it's hard to lose a large majority of people like that, with one fell swoop. And then I'll take it another direction too, and see what you guys think. Of course, will, there's a way, something's going to happen. And is this just going to start more segmented, smaller groups, and it's going to be hard to kind of find that one big group that was BSM?
I think as a community, like, and I've grown tired of Facebook just in general. I've been finding other avenues to do, to buy, and definitely just on a personal level. I mean, I don't enjoy Facebook. I enjoy Instagram and Twitter, but Facebook to me it feels like it's become kind of like it went from being fun to like something mandatory you had to do. You woke up, you brush your teeth, you checked and see who posted a picture about their kid or something. It's just like in general, Facebook's losing a lot of steam in society as other platforms are growing. And I think the inevitability here, and I have an app in development, but I think the inevitability here is that somebody creates something specifically for bourbon consumers. And frankly, it should be someone on this podcast right now, because, the fact is that this shit's going to keep happening. I don't know if someone sold Mark Zuckerberg a fake pappy or what, but the whole, it has happened.
Me. Sorry, Fred.
What's that?
It was me. Sorry.
I always took you as a fake Pappy guy.
Yeah.
Blame it on the lawyer. Absolutely.
Well, he knows how to get himself out of it.
Yeah.
That's right.
There's no law saying I can't refill this and sell it. But it's just this shit's just going to keep happening, and then they're going to say they're going to start regulating your private messaging. It's just that's what the fuck ever. I mean, the last time this happened, I actually spent a lot of time reaching out to Facebook, getting comments from them. I spoke to people at Facebook about the last time. The last time we had some sites go down, and it just, I mean, they played me a fool. They played everyone a fool. Like they played our government a fool. Facebook just does whatever the fuck it wants to do. I mean, it steals our information. They're turds. And I hate all of this. And, the secondary groups.
There comes the feelings journal,
Right.
give me my own meme.
Yeah.
Or as my friend Steve Saban would say, fuck that guy. So, but that's how I feel about Facebook. Fuck them.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, right? So we're all, and you notice this with the whole delete Facebook movement, and you see a ton of different long reads on tech blogs or other areas. Like people are still going to use Facebook no matter what, right? You can't kick it. As Fred mentioned, you wake up, brush your teeth, check Facebook. But that's what people realize. You might leave Facebook, but the rest of society stays on. But that being said, bourbon might leave Facebook and people will go with it, because at the end of the day, if people want to make money, they're going to go where the money is. So it may be more of an inconvenience and people might complain about it, but they're still going to go do it because they're going to want to sell bourbon and they're going to want to buy bourbon, and free economy will find a way. So I think it's just going to be a super inconvenience, and people will complain about it a lot. That being said, I bet a lot of people just go wherever the money's going to take them, which at the end of the day is what it's all about anyways, right? We're not talking about a community or hey, checking in on each other. It's I'm going there to make money or I'm going there to spend money. That's all it is. Right.
Yeah.
Dropping the hammer.
I think that kind of the tough part is figuring out Facebook's logic in this. And to me, it's just they don't want the liability. We've talked about this before on multiple different, whether it's shipping or just online sales, whatever it is. Facebook doesn't want the liability, so they got to at least put that out there. What I'm interested to see is, kind of going back to asking Craig, does this feel different than the times before? Is Facebook really going to follow through with this? It kind of does sound like they are, and it is a little bit different, but we've been down this road before, and it may be kind of a CYA move from them of who knows? I don't know what kind of legal ramifications they'd have. Brian could probably speak a little more to that. It seems like in the past, there's been a whole lot of other shadier deals happen on Craigslist and that kind of stuff. And I don't know if those guys have ever gotten in trouble or prosecuted for actual illegal behavior, or at least more illicit behavior. But we'll see. It definitely is a big platform. I've kicked around ideas of having a solution on my site with Sealbox. But it's just there's a lot of issues you have to solve before you jump into that. And Facebook was always just the easiest route because everyone was there. So it'll be interesting next couple of weeks for sure.
Yeah, it sort of struck me as, and maybe this is just wishful thinking, something that'll pass, that they'll crack down for a little bit, and you have to be doing things through links to BottleSpot or direct messages or whatever. And then it sort of flows back into the way it was. I mean, that's my guess anyhow. I think you're right, Blake, that it's probably a lot of CYA from Facebook. But other than that, it's, there's the underlying fact that in most jurisdictions, you can't sell person to person on the secondary market. So once they get their lawyers involved in telling them that, I mean, that's the road they're going to go down every single time.
You and your rules.
Yeah, I know.
Lawyers and your rules.
We make the rules. We make exceptions to the rules. We enforce the rules, and we get paid on at each step of the way. I mean,
at least you're honest about it.
It's the greatest cycle there is in business. Yeah,
yep, that's exactly right. You got to get paid at every step. But I've wondered too. Is this going to push it more? Is there a lobbying effort? Maybe is this going to push it more toward like Kentucky's vintage spirits law, and is there a push to get it into those retailer hands so that you have some assurances against fakes if you're buying it from a reputable vintage spirits
Brian,
retailer?
That's a great point. I actually had this conversation with a friend of mine who's is a really big seller, and I said it's going to be great for us because no one knows where to go to get bottles. And then if you're a key person in this chain, everybody's going to remember you from those groups or whatever, and you're just going to call them. And so you're going to have more buyers from that perspective. And I'll also say, like, I get probably five emails a day, and I'm not even kidding. 5 emails a day of just someone finding something in their basement. And I try to always push them into the legal ways to sell that. And nobody wants to do that. So
that's right.
No one wants a record of the transaction. Everybody wants cash. So
then just lowball them and keep the bottles yourself. That's what I'd be doing.
Maybe that's what I do.
Just forward all those emails to me, Fred. Put an automatic if inquiring about selling.
Whatever, you get them to.
Yeah.
They send them to all of us to see if one of us bite.
Of course.
Yeah.
100%.
And then it's like double what the secondary market is. Like, well, I was thinking maybe around $4,000 for a Pappy 15. Like,
well, it was because it was their grandpas, and their grandpa taught them how to ride a bike. You know, so it has additional meaning to them.
It sounds about right.
Game of Go Fish.
I've heard it. Yeah. Like the Nigerian prince all over again.
There you go.
So, while we're talking about sort of what the next phase of this is, I mean, do you think if there's any other platforms where something like this could live, or is Facebook the only one? Because if we roll back a few years, Reddit went through the same exact thing. And so Reddit kind of shut down their whole entire sales motion. And so when you look at the difference of what you see on Reddit versus what you see on Facebook, it's two opposite worlds. Reddit is definitely more conversation focused, review focused, everything like that, versus Facebook, which is buy, sell, trade. And then you've got a few groups that are kind of like news. You don't really have a whole lot of people putting their tasting notes out there. But do you think that there's anything else of?
I mean, at the end of the day, right? So both Reddit, Facebook, at its core, at least for like the BSM and the Reddit, it's just it's an old school bulletin board. That's all it is. It's just an old school forum. If someone just creates a forum, and it's one more link you have to go to and you moderate it. That's all it is, right? Anyone, I mean, literally anyone watching right now or listening later on, they can go out and do this. You just got to get the masses to go there. But that's literally at its heart. That's all what we're talking about. Facebook and Reddit. That's all it was. It was just an old school.
The winning ticket.
20 years.
The winning ticket here is that there's a paywall to get into, some kind of forum. So you pay $50 to be a member, and somebody takes on the liability of having the forum, and it happens there. And then it's not public. You have to get in there. Yeah. You have high level privacy things in there, and I used to belong to a few of those in like author circles, and I'd be communicating with high level authors, and there was I wouldn't be able to share that information. Of course, it's the internet, so you always could do it, but I would be penalized strictly by the agreement I signed to be a part of it. So I think there is a way to do this, and we can protect the people who want to enjoy this hobby. But I'll go to the lawyer here and ask, is that possible? Could we create some kind of private forum where we could have 40,000 people in there?
Why couldn't you do something like sportsbook or gambling? Like, but when I did used to gamble, I had a private website that I went to, and back in the day,
a lot of air quotes going on.
You would, you would bet and you'd have your bookie, and you would meet him, once a week to settle up. I mean, and it goes on it still goes on. And so it seems like that could happen for some of these secondary markets also.
You mean to have an intermediary act like a?
I mean, it wouldn't be legal, obviously,
right.
But I mean, sports bookies and gamblers are getting away with it. And nobody's hunting them down to shut it down.
Right.
I think that's a bigger market, much bigger market.
Yeah,
well, true.
Talking billions there. So here, yeah. So and then that's why I'm not exactly sure. I haven't figured out why there's the focus on the whiskey market here. I mean, it's sure we've got 50,000 or whatever it is members of these groups, but what's that? It's a drop in the bucket. It shouldn't really bother anyone, but when it comes down to it, it's in most jurisdictions you're not supposed to do it.
Fuck Facebook.
So is Facebook now in the same genre as vodka in the the Fred Minnick echelon of hatred?
We need a sign behind you, Fred.
I
still like Facebook
right now. Facebook has its purpose. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what that purpose is anymore, but whatever. So vodka has no purpose. Let's just put it that way.
So to kind of wrap this up, one last question for Craig. What are you going to do with all your free time now?
Honestly, I was probably over the past few months have been one of the lesser active admins, but it makes for you got to do something while you're sitting on the toilet, right? So now I guess I'll have to go back to reading or something like that.
Wait. You did all that adminning while you were on the toilet?
I mean, when else are you going to do it, right?
Well, they weren't accepting donations, so they weren't getting paid for the job. So it's it's out of the graciousness of their hearts that they were doing it anyway. So absolutely. So Craig, thank you so much for coming on tonight and kind of giving us a breakdown of sort of the history of what it is and sort of the future of what we can expect from the new BSM going forward. So again, as of today, everything is still provisional. So wait until you hear from an admin on a forum to kind of see what the actual future will hold. But and if Owen or anybody else wants to do that on the admin team, they will post the email that Craig was talking about at the very beginning that we were alluded to as well. So they can see that this wasn't just all smoke and mirrors. That was real threats happening. So
right.
So yeah, Craig. Thanks, Craig. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Cheers, man. Be safe out
Cheers.
there.
So while we wait for Marianne to come on, let's kind of switch it in a different direction. But let's go ahead and kind of take it. As I'd mentioned, we had a listener sort of reach out to us and talked about. It was actually Patrick Knoll. He reached out, and we all love bourbon as a hobby. But the question is how can we ensure that we are not becoming an alcoholic in the process? Hey, it's Kenny here, and I want to tell you about an event that's happening on Saturday, August 24th, because I want to see you in historic downtown Frankfort, Kentucky at Bourbon on the Banks. It's the Commonwealth's premier bourbon tasting and awards festival. There's live music and over 100 vendors of food, beer, wine, and of course, bourbon. But guess what? Even we'll be there in the Bourbon Pursuit booth. You can check out all the events, including tastings with the master distillers that you've heard on the show before, and the People's Choice Award for the best bourbon out there. You can get your all-inclusive ticket for $65, plus you can join on the free Friday night event. Go and check it out, bourbononthebanks.org. And through June 30th, you can get your discounted ticket offer, 2 tickets for the low price of $110 when using the code BOB2019 during checkout at bourbononthebanks.org. You've probably heard of finishing beer using whiskey barrels, but a Michigan distillery is doing the opposite. They're using beer barrels to finish their whiskey. New Holland Spirits claims to be the first distillery to stout a whiskey. The folks at Rack House Whiskey Club heard that claim and had to visit the banks of Lake Michigan to check it out. It all began when New Holland Brewing launched in '97. Their Dragon's Milk beer is America's #1 selling bourbon barrel-aged stout. In 2005, they applied their expertise from brewing and began distilling. A beer barrel finished whiskey began production in 2012, and Rack House Whiskey Club is featuring it in their next box. The barrels come from Tennessee, get filled with Dragon's Milk beer twice, then mature bourbon is finished in those very same barrels. Rack House Whiskey Club is a Whiskey of the Month club on a mission to uncover the best flavors and stories from craft distillers across the U.S. Along with 2 bottles of hard-to-find whiskey, Rack House's boxes are full of cool merchandise that they ship out every 2 months to members in over 40 states. Go to rackhousewhiskeyclub.com to check it out and try a bottle of beer barrel bourbon and beer barrel rye. Use code PURSUIT for $25 off your first box. The question is how can we ensure that we are not becoming an alcoholic in the process? So is there something that you do to kind of curb that, or do you just look at it like, well, I'm a very high functioning alcoholic?
What was it wasn't Jimmy Kimmel. Who's the other late night guy? Oh shoot. Anyways, he had the thing is like, thank you, craft beer, for making my alcoholism looking like a fun new hobby. And it can kind of morph into that. So it is really a kind of a sad reality of it is you don't want that to ever be a problem for someone who you're enjoying a hobby with, and then all of a sudden it's an issue. So for me, it's just like taking, whether it's a week, few days, some even go a month off of drinking. I think that's really, if you figure out if that dependence is there and it's no longer fun and you're just drinking to drink. So I think that's important to take time off every now and then.
So I think I'm the only one here that does it full time, right? Jordan, are you full time yet? Bourbon
No.
full time?
Drinker.
So like this is like I know Kenny, you'd said this is the hobby, but this is actually what I do for my living and have done so for more than a decade. And when I came, I'll share something very personal. I have PTSD for my time in Iraq, and I've been fighting that for since I've been home. And in that process, I went through a lot. In my recovery, I went through a lot of therapy, and one of the things that I picked up was mindfulness, and that is one of the reasons why bourbon really, why I think I really focused on tasting, was because mindfulness was basically a way for me to ground myself of something else. And you would have to think entirely about whatever it is you were doing, whether you were like, you're in a moment, you're trying to visualize and feel everything in that moment. And for me, I would visualize and feel everything on my palate. And when I am not able to taste something, I put it down. Like, and oftentimes, I won't be mindful of what day it is. It'll be like on a anniversary date of something that happened. It could be, it could be, the day that, I saw someone get killed. It could be the day I almost got killed. It could be something like that. But there are things that in us that we don't always know, but we automatically get into, bad moods. And so everybody will have something that can give them a sign for when they could get themselves in a problem drinking situation. And for me, it's tasting. And it's in particular of like where on my palate I taste something. So I would challenge anyone who wants to, explore this for themselves. I would say analyze the moments that you've had, you may have had too much and you did something that you shouldn't have, or you went too far. I would say analyze, what you felt like going into that situation and see if you can stop yourself from going in that situation again. And so that's just one thing that I do. I also try to like not have, there's tasting and then there's drinking. My tasting is like analytical. I keep it very, smell it, analyze it, taste it, spit. Drinking, and this is, where I can get myself into a little bit of like, having more than two, is if I'm watching Justified, or if I'm watching something that I'm really into and I'm just into that moment, or if I'm reading a book that I'm really into and I just keep like, pouring, and then I've got four, and, so like, it's being mindful of that as well. It's like knowing when you need to stop. And always have a plan to get home. It's one of the most important parts. Do not get in the car if you've been drinking. And most importantly, the Distilled Spirits Council has a sheet for what is moderation and drinking. And I really try to follow that. And, men can drink more than women, but there is an amount, and I think it turns out to be something like 15 drinks a week for men.
Those are Fantastic points, Fred. Thanks for sharing. And I think to add on to that, right, you touched upon a little at the end there. I think everyone's different, right? So if you feel, some people 2 drinks, they'll be drunk, right? Everyone's body's different. So if you feel that you're drinking all the time or you're getting drunk all the time, just because you're only having 2-3 drinks a night, right? When you see other people having 9, 10, 15, whatever, right? That doesn't mean, it's okay to justify it. So you'll know your own limits and don't compare yourself against anyone else, right? That's the best way of doing it. You know what's right for you, right? And you know what's going to be too much, and you're going to know what's just right. And everyone finds that point sometime in life, and you just got to be, as Fred said, mindful of it. But don't compare yourself and say, well, I see everyone else on Facebook drinking, I don't know, eight doubles a night, right? I only drink 4. I'm okay. If 4 is too much for you, it's too much for you. That's what you got to keep in mind, right? Everyone has their own personal limit. And you do have to, as Fred said, just be mindful of that. And that's one of the key things to do too.
Did you find that limit when you were selecting a bottle or a barrel of Pinhook this past week?
Well, we were thankfully.
Tell people about the process first.
So so really quick. So me and Nick went down along with Ryan to select a bottle for Breaking Bourbon Single Barrel Club from Pinhook, and they're located at Castle on Key. So they proposed crazy cool, but kind of crazy, this experience where we worked with their master taster that they work with at Castle on Key to narrow down. They pulled a little over 40 barrels for us. And these were the barrels designated for the single barrel program. Instead of just going through like 3 or 4, we went through all of them. We drank all the bourbons. So they did proof them down to 50 to 60 proof, right? And it was a lot of smelling, a lot of sensory stuff, tons of sensory stuff, lots of spitting. So the amount of actual bourbon we drank at the end of the day, what would you say, Ryan? Did we drink even like 2 ounces of bourbon?
If that. I mean,
if that.
And yes, I was spitting. I wasn't swallowing. It was only like 2 or 3 ounces in that plastic cup by the end of the day. And it was at 40 proof or 50 proof too. But that was, like Fred said, it was very analytical, very, we were thoughtful. We were very focused on what we were doing. Like we weren't there just to like slosh it back. And our motive wasn't to go get slammered or whatever. But I mean, I think you just have to know, like Fred talked about, I'm big in mindfulness, awareness. Like I have ADHD. And I know like when my mind can kind of take over and send me places. And then when I've had too much, my body can tell me like, all right, you need to settle down for a few days. And you got to listen to your body. When you start to like ignore that and you start to like drink to fight off the night before, chasing the hair of the dog, that's when I think you're like really going down a slippery slope. And I've had those days, you go on a bachelor party or you're a lake weekend or a golf weekend and you're there to party for 2 or 3 days. And then like, all right, I am done for like 3 or 4 days, just to clear it up. And then when you can't recognize that, I think that's when you definitely need to seek some help and find some, because there's definitely some issues there.
Yeah, I don't know the answer, certainly, but Fred, thank you for your openness on that. I think that will help a lot of people listening to today, and the other comments about just knowing yourself and knowing when it's time to take a break. So I think I really appreciate those personally.
All right. So that kind of sparked a topic and kind of went down a crazy little, hopefully we can come back out of this and raise our spirits, I guess, if you can, a little bit. But this was really coming because there was an article on CNN this past week and talked about how investors are looking at alternatives to bars, and maybe it's like a Brooklyn thing, like I don't know, where there's these sober bars that are kind of coming up, right? The people that are making these craft mocktails, and they still cost you $10-12 a piece. But do you see this as like a catching on thing, or do you see this as a just a fad? Personally?
So last year at Tales of the Cocktail, the world's most important, largest bar conference, they had a party. William Grant threw a party where there was no alcohol. Like the opening party had no alcohol. So this is like a really real trend, and they're trying to chase these 23-year-olds who don't drink.
So let's just go ahead and we'll Marianne's joined us now. So we'll kind of wrap up this topic really quick. So Marianne, we're talking about sober bars, if they are actually going to become a thing. So Fred, I'll let you finish up your thought, and then we'll lead on over to Marianne then.
Yeah, the growth of like the sober bars and this trend of like just to eliminate drinking, it falls in line with all these efforts to legalize alcohol advertising and these fraudulent studies that are coming out from a publication called Lancet that is extrapolating minute amounts of data and basically saying, all alcohol causes all kinds of cancers. And so we're having this basically this frantic health scare that is, in my opinion, is fraudulent, and the industry cannot fight it. Like, they're losing everywhere they turn because there's a new study every week that tells you you're going to get cancer if you drink alcohol. And the sad part is every one of those damn studies almost always get recanted. But the fact is that it gets on USA Today once, it's there forever.
Sounds like Roundup and what I deal with on a day-to-day basis.
That's right.
Hold on, Roundup doesn't cause cancer? Can we talk about that?
Yep.
It causes it in California, but not in Kentucky.
But I mean, when you think about it, though, there's other studies that come out that says, a glass of wine a day or a glass of whiskey a day or whatever it is, and then you're going to live to 90. These are, and if anybody that actually Googles it, I think there was a TED Talk or something like that where somebody actually made a fake scientific research study, and it got published in like PR News and like Newswire and all this kind of crazy stuff. So it was basically a study to actually show like how false these sort of scientific studies are that get really blown out of proportion. So it sounds like there's a lobbyist group that's really pushing towards this to make something like this a reality.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, anybody else have any other comments or thoughts on that before we change directions?
My only thought is that article that you sent us, Kenny, the description of one of those drinks was so god-awful that should kill it in its tracks. So I wrote it down. An acidic beverage made from vinegar, fruit, sugar, and club soda. I mean, that should kill the movement right there.
You could probably use that. Ryan, you could probably use that for Roundup.
Exactly.
What's the
mix it up, Ryan?
What's the cocktail mix made out of apple cider vinegar? It's where they do the fruit and the apple cider vinegar and shrub. Yeah, I mean it's basically a non-alcoholic shrub, isn't it? I could be wrong. Okay.
Sure, never mind. Take your word for it. Yeah. I'm not a bartender. I don't
make my own shrubs one time. It was the worst thing I've ever done in the kitchen, I think. And then I was like, I'll just buy these from now on.
They definitely taste better than they smell.
Yes.
Super vinegary. Yes.
Yeah. Yikes. I was like, I'll use vinegar or on like, reheating like pork butts and stuff like that. When we smoke barbecue stuff like that, but haven't really done a whole lot in the cocktails. That's a whole new venture for me.
That's a hard pass.
So with that, let's go ahead and bring on our next guest. So you heard her already. She's been on the podcast before. I think it was like episode 16, like way, way back in the day.
Yeah,
so
back when we sucked, we were not very good.
we still suck, but I think we're less sucky now.
Yeah.
But Marianne, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Kenny. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So, we love to have you on. I know Fred kind of thinks of you like a little sister sometimes. He feels like
looks like you all went eyeglass shopping together.
Yeah.
The same shape. We compared it last time I saw him.
Yeah. Hanging out with Sir Paul.
But we kind of want to have you on and kind of talk about, what's new with you. It's not, I think you made national headlines, right? I mean, it was everywhere of the separation between you and Castle and Key. So kind of talk a little bit about it and sort of what's on the horizon for you too.
Yeah, I am really proud of everything that I built and we achieved at Castle and Key. But what I've learned about myself is that I really love making things and building things. And, kind of all my startup energy was used in Castle and Key to get them where they are. And I'm ready to try some new things. I've been wanting to get into some different spirit categories. Not that I'm going to leave bourbon, not permanently anyway. But I want to get some experience in mezcal and in rum, and we'll see where life goes from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for a lot of us, we were all kind of shocked to see the news because you had been really the face of the brand for so long. I don't think there was a day that we didn't see on Instagram with you at the distillery or seeing the gardens or something like that. So, definitely we wish them the best of luck in everything that they're doing, and you as well. But kind of talk. I know you kind of took a little bit of a break too. You went out west for a few days to kind of regroup.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be big news when that press release went out. So I just went ahead and made the executive decision that being in a remote island in the Pacific Northwest, and my aunt's treehouse, my dad's cousin, would be a good idea. So yeah, I took a few days off and spent some time in nature and getting ready to take a little bit more time off. Down in Florida right now, and I'll be heading back out west next month. So yeah, some exploration and travels coming up just to regroup a little bit before I figure out what's next.
Mm-hmm. Let's kind of talk, I've been in this situation too, where we're looking for new gigs right away and you kind of need that time away. But what was the response like from other companies or anything like that, where was it like, oh crap, she's on the market, we got to grab her real quick? I mean, did you have any of those conversations pop up?
Yeah, I had lots of people reaching out to me through the website. Some folks just looking to pick my brain for consulting type work. Others that were like, all right, yeah, we've got a brand or we're starting something and we wanted to know if you were interested in being our master distiller. But I'm not really interested in just getting another job. The consulting part is really interesting to me. I think, my expertise in developing products and helping to design processes is something that a lot of folks, more so maybe outside of Kentucky, could benefit from, learning the authentic Kentucky way of making spirits. But yeah, I really just want to get back into the gears and challenge myself and maybe, learn some new things.
Do you think there's bigger opportunity like in other spirits? Like, I wouldn't say is bourbon stagnant for you, or like, because it's kind of the same thing. Like, there's not much variance or variation you can kind of do with that. Like with mezcal or other spirits, does that kind of, you can get more creative with?
I am, I'm just totally convinced that we're not done innovating in bourbon yet, but it just seems like every new thing is kind of a thing, an iteration of something that's already been done.
Yeah.
So I think there's a whole new genre of innovation out there that nobody's tapped into yet. And what it is inspiration from other spirits, and I have yet to learn everything I need to actually execute that. But I think there's lots of interesting spirits and lots of unique ways that they create flavor that we can bring back in, even though, it's this certain set of regulations that make bourbon what it is. There's more to play with.
Right. And it's not like the bourbon consumers are so open to new ideas, with new product offerings. They're so welcoming,
They sure are. That's what I was about to say. I was like, that's been the bread and butter for a while. So have you been trained in that area, or is that something that you're looking to explore?
In what area?
Mezcals and other things.
Yeah, not really. I mean, I worked for Brown-Forman, which is a global spirits company. It's not just whiskey, although I did focus a lot on whiskey. I spent a lot of time in Mexico and out in California making wine. They sent me to Belgium to do a few liqueur projects. I made vodka for them.
Come on now, Marianne.
I know, Fred.
Marianne, come on now.
Vodka line with Fred? Is that not?
You just lost Fred.
Yeah.
Fred tasted it and he didn't spit it out. So.
That's true.
He was just being kind.
I did say I did right after I did taste it. I did ask you straight. I was like, "What are you doing? Why are you making vodka? Why are you doing this?" Marianne? I did do that.
Yeah, it's just a shame that was the first thing that you tasted that I made from scratch.
Yeah. Irony though.
And he's like, "Is there anything to drink up here?" I'm like, well, we're gonna go to the warehouse next, but then we've got this clear stuff that I know you're not gonna want to taste, but.
Now you seem to have a real passion for gin, and we hung out, the other day, and we were having a lot of different gin cocktails. What's your favorite style of gin? There's a lot out there.
Geez, gin is a almost infinite world of ways that you can change the flavor. I think that's the thing that's so interesting about it is you can do almost anything. My palate, as a bourbon distiller, kind of leans towards something that's more balanced. So a London Dry that's like super juniper forward is not where I tend to gravitate. So like a botanical, more modern botanical style, but doing really unique things. Like I think that the Castle and Key gin, while nothing is super crazy or off the wall, it's unique in the way that it's crafted. And that's not my favorite word ever, but just the thoughtfulness of the ingredients and how they're integrated together.
Yeah, absolutely. Since you were talking about consulting earlier, David Jennings of Rarebird 101 wanted to ask, because you had missed the earlier half of this conversation, if you wanted to start consulting on helping direct the new bourbon secondary market since it's now going under.
Oh, I don't know how I can help, but
the new admin.
Yes.
Admin and bourbon secondary.
Marianne, did you ever buy anything? Did you ever buy any old bottles on a secondary market?
No. I tried to barter for a couple, but never actually got any bites on that. Like, I'll give you a great VIP tour.
I remember, I remember like this was a long time ago. It was when you were with Woodford, maybe 2013, 2014. It was a long time ago, but you did bring up like some kind of interaction with you and Chris for a bottle. Is that what you're talking about when you were trying to like have an evening with Chris Morris for a bottle? Does that ring a bell?
Morris. Are you?
He was in one of those bourbon secondary markets, and you were trying to get people to come to a Chris Morris event. And you ended up.
Was it the old President's Choice stuff? Is
that might have been it? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a good story, Fred.
Well, she's the one. She brought up the bartering, and I was like, "Is that it?"
Yeah, I can't remember that. No, this was actually a Castle and Key. A lot of folks would have those old Castle decanters, like I'd never seen one before, and be like, "Oh my gosh!" And for however many hundreds of dollars, and I'm like, "Well, I don't really want to give you money, but if you'd like to come out and take a tour of the distillery, we can probably work something out." And
everybody always wants money, Marianne. Always comes down to the Benjamin.
I understand.
So last question, Marianne, before we ask one more question, then we'll kind of round this out. So for you, I know you talked about wanting to do consulting, but kind of picture dream job-esque here. Would you like to start at something smaller and help build that up? Kind of like I don't know. Castle and Key was kind of big. Let's be honest. That's a pretty massive place.
Pursuit Series will be a perfect size.
Yeah, it's a perfect size. Yeah, we definitely need it. And then, or would you rather go to a large corporation? If it would be the Heaven Hills, or would be the Maker's Mark of the World, whatever it is, or would you just like to just keep doing the consulting and bouncing around? And Mark Knight, he's putting you in some tough shoes to fill here, and said Marianne could be the next Dave Pickerel with a question mark.
I definitely think that his passing left a gap in the market. So as much opportunity as comes from that, I would be grateful for. I've had lots of various brands reach out. I think, I'm just going to leave myself open to the universe and see what happens. I don't want to say for sure, and I will or won't, build my own thing someday. I think that I would love to be involved with people who are passionate and want to make good stuff. And if they turn into large brands, that's cool. If they want to keep them small and boutique, that's fine too.
So Marianne, just to have it on the record, this means you're open to Pursuit Spirits.
Whatever you were bartering earlier, we'll make it happen.
Nice.
So Marianne, I'll say like, I've talked about you many times, often in defense of you. Sadly, when people bring up the master distiller role and everything, and I just want to tell you, you can do anything. You have incredible smarts for this business. You have an ability to market, for marketing and everything as well, and that's rare. And when you came out and chose to take the title of master distiller, you became a hero for a lot of young women. And there were women in their 50s who looked up to you after that. And I know that you had a lot of I'm sorry, there's a chat going on in our group. We've been spammed.
We've been spammed.
Yeah. We've been spammed. But you can, Marianne, you could do anything. So whatever it is you want to put your mind to, I hope it's bourbon. I hope you do stay in bourbon. I think you have a talent here. For God's sake, stay away from vodka. Don't take your talents to vodka.
We will never do vodka.
The operative word in your opening statement was flavor.
Yeah.
Flavor. Just remember that. Let that be the driver to your dreams.
You can always add cordials, Fred.
Seriously, she should go with a flavored vodka.
You guys are horrible.
So that was a good way to sort of wrap this up. But I do have because we always end up having way more topics to talk about, and I kind of want to do this one real quickly. Also to kind of trail on what Fred said, there was somebody that spammed our chat going on. It was Sexy Triple X asking people to click on links for cheeseburgers and booze. And it's like Jordan put in here like maybe we should have her on next time. Like
one more where they seem cool.
Everybody wants cheeseburgers and
Jordan clicked the link, unfortunately.
I was so confused when they pop up because I wasn't following the chat, and I'm like, "What? Who's Sexy XXX?"
Why am I not in the chat right now?
I'm missing.
I was doing my best not to lose it.
So speaking of cheeseburgers and booze here, this was a question that Fred had put out on Twitter this past week. And would you drink a marijuana infused bourbon? Go ahead. What do you think?
Only if it had real weed in it.
Yeah, because there was a lot of back and forth.
What's
people were like
they put THC in.
No, like we're putting like the real deal in here. Like we're not doing this whole hemp bull crap, whatever it is. Like let's go all in here. And also people were going. They were kind of pissed because they're like, it's not bourbon then if it's infused. Like we get it, okay? Like like we know it's a new category. People just want to. They really got to harp on it. But I guess the question is reefer bourbon, are you in or out?
So if anyone's had Charbet, have you already had it?
Well, Charbet is using hops. They distill
that's
hops.
what they say.
The unspoken.
Man, I don't know, man. Marco, he's dropping a little ganja up in there.
There might be a little bit more than hops.
Yeah.
If it gives the same effect, yes, I'm all in.
Thank you. At least somebody said yes, because I say yes. I'm in.
Yes.
Who says I haven't
Depends
had
if it's an indica or a sativa,
I'll go the hybrid route.
Okay. Who says I haven't had it? There's a bar in New York. You ask for a dragon and you get it. So
wow.
Oh, okay. All right. You want to drop what the name is in the chat there so we can tell the whole world?
No, I forgot it.
Just test out your night and start asking for the dragon around New York.
Just go to every bar in New York and ask for the dragon.
You can get some weird things that happen, but you may find the right spot. So.
That actually sounds really exciting.
Okay, so it sounds like Marianne's in.
Marianne's in. She's already working on it.
Try, and so my wheels are turning with like the product development side. Like, how would we infuse the marijuana into bourbon? I think there are lots of ways.
Okay, so just tell us one. Can we do it like in our basement? Like
yeah.
Oh yeah, I would think so.
So one of the big things about the alcohol and marijuana get into the bloodstream differently. And one of the big reasons why Constellation invested $4 billion into the cannabis industry was so they could create a research and development industry to find out how cannabis would get in your system quicker. And so they're going to be creating the formula that pairs like the same absorption rate of cannabis, or the same absorption rate as alcohol to cannabis. So they're basically probably going to fuse those two. And I would look for
uppers and downers.
Cannonball.
That's another drug.
All right. Well, it sounds like everybody else here is going to plead the fifth on answering that one.
The damn lawyers.
Yeah, I know.
Been quiet over there.
Everybody's got their careers.
I'll take out my ears, and you guys can say it.
All right. So with that, let's go ahead and wrap it up. So Marianne, thank you so much for coming on and joining us tonight. Just for a short while.
To join, I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you on again and talk more about, marijuana and the distillation. I think you're gonna blow some minds there.
Yep.
But no, thank you again for coming on and kind of give us an idea of, what's next for you and everything like that. We're always happy to have you on the show. You're a good friend of it. And we always, we wish you the best of luck as well. And I'm sure this is not gonna be the last time we talk to you. It's going to be relatively soon. So thank you again for coming on. So Ryan, Fred, another good show, but I want to pass it around to the table for everybody to kind of, speaking of marijuana and bourbon, catch next week's episode. It's all about marijuana and bourbon.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, I forgot. I should have teed that up a little bit. So with that, Blake, go ahead and kind of round it out.
Yeah, so I'm Blake from Bourboner.com and also Sealbox.com. Let's see, Bourboner, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the above. So far, we're not a site affected by the great shutdown of Facebook 2019. And then Sealbox.com, SELBACHS. Get all your craft spirits. You still have, 2 hours left to order with free shipping if you use Father's Day as the promo code. So
get your dad a gift.
Get your dad a gift. By far the biggest plug I've given so far. So if you're listening to it on the actual podcast on Thursday, sorry, you're out of luck. But if you're live tonight, good for you. So
brilliant. Still have a chance.
Yeah. But thanks for having me on.
As always, Brian.
All right, thanks. This is Brian with Sippin' Corn. I'm on all the social medias at Sippin' Corn. I want to give one shout out, if I can, to TJ Thompson of TJ Woodworks. I'm drinking now a 1973 old Overholt that he sent to me. And I'm shocked at what was a standard bourbon in the 70s is light years ahead of a lot of bourbon that's coming out now. So thanks to TJ.
Have TJ call me if he needs to get rid of it.
Yeah, I'll have him give you a call. But thanks everyone on the round table. Thanks, Marianne. It's always great to be on this.
Fred, you're going to get 5 emails tomorrow. You can let him have a bone.
That's fair.
And Jordan.
Sure. This is Jordan, one of the 3 guys from Breaking Bourbon, breakingbourbon.com, all the socials and Patreon at Breaking Bourbon. As always, a fun time. Looking forward to our next roundtable. Hopefully Sexy XX will be on with some cheeseburgers and booze, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Awesome. So again, thank you everybody for joining, and as well, always follow Bourbon Pursuit on all the socials, plus patreon.com/Bourbon Pursuit. So with that, fellas, everyone, and Marianne, thank you so much for coming on tonight. This was a pleasure, and we'll see everybody next week.
Peace.
Cheers. Cheers.